Looking for a leather craft that is easy and stunning all at the same time? Watch today's video and I have one for you. These are magnetic bookmarks that I have been making for my friends for their birthday gifts, and they are so fun to make. Very quick, very little materials that you need, and in the end it just makes a stunning little gift for your friend or for you. So on these bookmarks, I did use our leather engraver. I have a lot of videos on how we use our engraver on leather and on wood. You can check that out below. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. We would appreciate that. You don't have to have an engraver to make this project. You can make them blank with no design, but I'm going to show you everything you need to do to make these adorable magnetic leather bookmarks. Here's the materials you're going to need for your bookmarks. I like to stain my leather. You can leave it natural, but I'm going to use medium brown stain. These are little magnet buttons that you're going to sew into your bookmark. So you're going to need 2 buttons for every bookmark. You're going to need some contact cement and then some really thin leather. This is actually goat leather that I buy from Hobby Lobby. And you're going to need a way to sew it. Typically for this type of leather, a heavy duty machine, you don't really need a leather machine, but a heavier duty machine, or you can hand sew it. And you're going to, if you're going to want to engrave it, you're going to need a pattern. I have the link down below to the pattern that I am going to engrave on these. So first of all, we're going to get your leather ready. I make my note here. Each bookmark is roughly 1 1/4 inches wide by 8 inches tall, and then it'll bend over and go in half that size. It might be a little shy of that 8 inches depending on how, maybe you're using a scrap of leather, but I am going to make 4 at a time. So for 4 of them, I'm going to need 2 pieces of leather, 7 inches by 8 inches. Okay, my leather is completely dry, so now it is time to cut out each bookmark as well as cut out the backing to be the same size, and then we can stain it. So on leather, you have to make sure that your leather is fantastically dry, no moisture in it at all before you stain it. So each bookmark is going to be 1 1/4 inch wide by roughly 8 inches tall. I have made some shorter because those were the size scraps I have. So if you put a design on your leather, you're going to want to center your design in the middle. So I'm just kind of eyeballing. This is a 1 1/4 inch wide, and that looks pretty good, and that'll still leave me 1 1/4 inch on the next one to make it centered. Make sure my leather is square with the board, which it looks pretty good. That looks good. So I'll go ahead and cut this one 1 1/4 inches wide. There, that looks really good, and that leaves enough room for us to do our stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting these out. So this is the backing piece. This is the longest you can make this. So I'm going to fold it in half so we can get a visual of where my design is going to be. And that actually looks really good, the top and bottom placement. So I'm going to go ahead and trim just a little here to get it square and then match up my length. Okay, time to put on some stain. I'm staining both sides and stain the edges, and then just a little bit on the inside in case there's some that peeks through. So shaking up my stain. This is medium brown, the antique leather stain from Phoebing's. I find the best way to put it on is with the little wool dauber, and there's still quite a bit in this container, so I'm able just to put my dauber down in there. Otherwise, I would pour it into a little jar. Boys wear gloves, put stain on the dauber, and then just rub it in. I do circular motions, and when I get it put on, and it is going to just make my design kind of a little hidden, just kind of a subliminal. I take just a cloth and smooth it on. Isn't that pretty? You can see the little design. And now with my dauber, just put it on the edge. I'm just going to do a little bit on the tips on the back. And make sure you wipe off the front so that edge. There we go. And so you just do that for your fronts and backs of all of the pieces. My straps are dry, and you can see how cool. It's just a subliminal little design on each one of these. And these are the 4 backs. And so now I have my magnet discs, which I have the link down below on where I ordered those. But what you're going to do is we're going to put wrong sides together, and we're going to temporarily hold them together with contact cement, but we're going to put the magnet in between before we glue that, and then we will sew it at the machine. But with magnets, there's positive and negative charge. So this one works really good. This one barely does. So when you're putting these together, we need to make sure that these 2 sides are the ones that are going to be hitting each other for the magnet. So what I have done, this is the correct way I want them to be. Turn them upside down this way before we put on the contact cement. So we're going to just put a small bead down the center of each one and a dot on the back of the magnets. And then you need to let contact cement dry for a few minutes before we put it together. Okay, it looks like that's drying. So we need to now put down our magnets, and the contact cement seems to get all over everything when I work with it. So I don't want to use anything that I will be sad if contact cement gets onto. So this is just a 1/2 inch piece of leather that I'm just going to use for a measurement. So there's about a 1/2 inch from the end. I'm going to put this magnet about right even with that, and I'm going to be lining up the plastic. You can line up however you want, but just so it's even on each end. And now I'm going to put a dot of contact cement on this side of it and wait just for a few minutes, and then we will sandwich them together. Okay, now I'm going to take the top side, set it down, and line up the edges as good as we can. Sometimes there's going to be some leather poking out, which we can trim and restain our edge. But that looks really good. You can let it sit and not move it at all, just on your work table, or you can take a little clip. As long as your leather is dry, it shouldn't leave a mark. Just be careful. Leather tends to have marks pretty easy. So we're gonna let that dry for a few minutes before we go to the sewing machine. Okay, getting ready to sew this. I am using a Janome HG 3000. No matter what machine you use, I always test on a test piece first to make sure your tension and everything. So I've already done that. Couple things when I get ready to sew leather, I always start somewhere that is less visible, more inconspicuous than others, and then we will pull the thread to the wrong side of the project. And on this, we're going to go all the way around the rectangle with a very narrow stitch, and we like to use a long stitch on leather. So starting on the back side, the magnet is right here. I can feel it while I'm sewing, and I'm just going to follow along the groove on that presser foot to do my stitching. Okay, that looks really good. I see a little bit of the leather peeking through, but I'm going to finish the edges here. I'll show you how I do that. And so I'm going to be rubbing some stain on that and finishing it off. So I'll finish sewing the other ones and then we will do the edges. Okay, they're all sewn, and looking at it, sometimes the little magnet plastic has scooted off to the side, and you need to trim it with scissors. But these all look pretty good. Some of the edging, like I said, is peeking through. A little trick that I do when I know I am staining, and then in a few hours I'm going to be doing the edges. If you keep your little dauber in a plastic bag, there's usually enough on it to be able to touch up your edges. So I'm just going to smush some of the stain in that crack. And while it's still wet, I'm going to take this tool that's used for brandishing the edges, and I'm going to rub it on it. Okay, I'm going to wipe off to make sure none of the stain is leaving a mark on the front. And this is just trial and error for me on making the best edge. I had saw some tutorial on taking saddle soap, rub that on the edge, take the brandishing tool. And this goat leather is super thin, so that's what I mean by trial and error. When it's super thin, it's really hard for me to get a nice edge on it. So if you have any tricks, I am always learning. So let me know below. But this makes it nice and finished for this project. And then I take a piece of beeswax, and I have a little groove in it, and do the edges with it. Okay. Now, oh, see, it hooks together really good. We want to have a nice crease on this end, but I want to make sure that I don't leave a mark from my clip. So I'm going to put just a scrap piece of leather there and put a clip on it, or you can set it under a book or something, but we want this to be a nice crease. And just let it sit for a little bit and your project's done. Okay, so there we have all 4 of my bookmarks are done. This is one of my favorite little gifts to give. It's just a simple way to give something that's classy, clever, and homemade. And I really love it. So if you have any questions while you're making yours, please comment down below. If you have any tips on how I can improve or do anything different, always love to hear from you. But as always, thank you for watching DIY on the House.